manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. Welcome, welcome to the show. Great show for you today. Midday risings, grand risings. Hey, sun is shining, Ra is shining bright today, and I think we're gonna have a great morning, great afternoon, great evening. So get out there and get you some fresh air, get you some good radiant energy from the sun, and may Ra bless us all. In the remote studio, we got our good brother Vince. What's going on, Vince? Anything new?
Well, there's a lot going on right now, and we're going to be talking about some of that stuff. There's so much happening right now. But before we get to the main topic for our conversation today, I just want to let everyone know that I'm going to be doing a one-person show at the Borderlight Festival in Cleveland. It's a Playhouse where it's going to take place on the 25th, 26th, 27th of this month, and you can get your tickets by going online to the borderlightcle.org website. I'm going to be doing 3 performances, and there is going to be a tribute to Winston Willis. The title of the show is Unmasked: Navigating a New World Order. I'm going to show a film that I did for Mr. Willis. Also going to do some spoken word and some music for you in that performance. So I got the information on the screen. I'll post it to the description of this video, and hopefully I will see you at the Hermit Club at 1629 Dodge Court, right across the street from the Greyhound bus station. So hope to see you in the place. Today, we are going to be talking about something that many people are not aware of, but there's a faction of the Republican Party that has plans for our government. There's going to be a massive transformation in this government if they have their way. And it's going to be really important for us as voters to be engaged and to be aware of what they are planning for. So we want to spend some time today talking about Project 2025. I've invited a few folks to join us, and you may have seen the promotion on Facebook earlier that Congresswoman Shontel Brown is also going to be joining us today. So she'll be coming in somewhere around 11:45, and we're looking forward to what she has to share with us today. But in the meantime, we have two very important folks. One of them is someone that is near and dear to me. It is Imani Capri. And as you can see, she is the #1 energy elevation coach. She is also a talk show host. She has a show on 95.9 FM WOVU. It's called Conversations Encouraged. And it comes on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. So you can tune in. She is also the editor of the Cleveland Observer newspaper. So she's doing quite a bit to raise consciousness and energy. So welcome to our program. As well, we have Mr. Derek G. Austin. He is an author, and he's written a couple of books. One of them that just recently got wrapped up. I listened to an interview on him yesterday, and he revealed that, and we'll give him an opportunity to share that information as well. And we have a few other folks that may be joining us as the broadcast ensues. So with that, we're going to get things started. Now, I think it's really important for us to have some background on Project 2025. It is something that has been authored by the Heritage Foundation, which is a Republican think tank. It represents the interests of the extreme conservative right. And I want to express this just right off the top and just go back in history a little bit. I don't know how many of us are remembering what happened during the early 80s when President Ronald Reagan was elected. But there was a similar manifesto that came together at that time. And 60% of that platform was actually enacted. So there are some who doubt the feasibility of these things coming into fruition, but just know that the planning involved in this document it's been in the works for a long time. This is not something that they just came up with a few weeks ago. It's over 900 pages, And there are references to the 45th president in this document. 312 times his name is mentioned in this document. We're going to talk about some of the things that Project 2025 proposes to do, but I'm just going to hit just a few of them. One of them is the elimination of the Department of Education. They also want to eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency. They want to do away with the Department of Health and Human Services. They want to ban all abortions. They want to place restrictions on in vitro fertilization. So reproductive rights are at stake here. Another thing that they want to do, and they're just following basically in the footsteps of states like Florida and others who are banning critical race theory. They want to eliminate any type of reference to African American history. They basically want to write us out of the history books. There are just so many things. And again, we'll talk about these things and I'll give you an opportunity to chime in on what your thoughts are. So before we dive in, I just want to give our guests, Imani and Derek, a chance to reflect on what they know about Project 25 and what they see as the most perilous aspects of it. And I'll start with you, Imani. As you looked at the information and you shared some information with me that was quite informative as well, because it gave me additional information about this. But what are your thoughts about this initiative and the danger that it poses to those of us who in this country, not only Black folk, but white folk will be affected as well?
So, first, thank you for the invitation to join today. I'm happy to be here. What I would say is, I still am kind of approaching reading Project 2025. Um, and I've listened to and taken in other people's comments about it, but now I'm in a space where I want to read for myself what is in that document. What I would say, kind of like bird's eye view, and we talk about this on Conversations in Courage this coming Tuesday at 11 a.m. I think it's very important for us, the electorate, to not get so freaked out or engaged in all of the chaos that is happening right now that we take our eye off of doing the things that we still have the power to do, making sure that we're educated, that we're checking our voter registration, registering to vote, and then actually voting, right? And so one of the things that I think is most dangerous about Project 2025 is that it's already happening. So I hope people really understand, like, if you pay attention and start connecting the dots in chess, the person who wins the game in the game of chess is the one that captures the king at the end, right? Checkmate, or creates so many scenarios where the king doesn't have very many options of movement. And honestly, that is kind of what is going on with democracy right now, and certain freedoms that we here in the United States perhaps take for granted. And so what I want people to understand is, when we look at what has happened with the Supreme Court, having six extreme conservative justices who were handpicked by Leonard Leo, also influenced by the Heritage Foundation, the court has been captured. Okay, so one of the things that I argue is that people talk about January 6th, and yes, it was an insurrection, but a significant coup happened. Checkmate is the presidential office, right? So I want people to really understand that it's not just about Project 2025 and the plan that the Heritage Foundation has put together. And the fact that it's almost 1,000-page document is very intimidating to a lot of people. It is part of the agenda to keep you off kilter, to keep you confused, to keep you distracted, right? And so what I want to encourage people, as the number one energy elevation coach who helps people transform their relationship with fear, stagnation, and stress, is to keep our eye on the ball. And what are the balls right now? Your self-care, your prayer, making sure that you check your voter registration, informing yourself in manageable doses about things like Project 2025, and then taking action to use your voice and help encourage other people to use their voices. I was just talking with someone yesterday about Project 2025 who supports Donald Trump. And all I can say is this election is not about two old white men who are only a few years apart in age. It's about ideology, right? It's about what kind of country do you want to see and live in, not just for ourselves, but casting our votes is about the babies coming behind us. What kind of world are we going to leave to them? Are my nieces and my nephew going to have fewer rights than me or my grandmother? That's what I care about, right? So I think bringing it home, landing my plane in reference to Project 2025, it's not something that I think we should take lightly. It is an agenda that is being implemented, and we're seeing the results of it with what happened with Roe versus Wade being rolled back, what we've seen with the making it more difficult for people to vote, and what this extremist right-wing majority on the Supreme Court has recently issued with the decision for presidential immunity. So people should understand, like, don't just be freaked out about that document. Like, really understand, with the document or not, it's already taking place. And the real stop measure is us exercising our voices.
Yeah, I want to wholeheartedly agree with you. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to do this show, because I think that it's important for people to be aware of what their thoughts are and what they would like to do, but also be aware of the power that we have as voters to detour that course of action that they want to take. Want to shift gears and talk to Derek, who, among other things, is an enthusiast about African American history, and such that he decided to create a superhero. And that superhero is a direct reflection of his awareness of who he is and his self. So when we look at this project and we see how many things are detrimental to us, and we see how important it is for us to have an awareness of who we are and what we can do, I think there are some ties between your mission as an author and our mission as voters to take action, because we can look at what's going on and sit back and just watch it unfold and do nothing, or we can do what we all can do. And it's not a situation where you have to have one person who does everything. It's a collective effort that creates the success that we would like to see in terms of pushing back on some of the things. And Imani, I'm really happy that you talked about the things that are already in progress. When we look at Ohio and we see that we have a Republican legislature, and we look at the way they are dismantling the Department of Education in this state, and we realize that the states are primarily responsible for the education that happens within those states, we should be energized not only to deal with what's going on in Washington, but also to deal with what's going on in Columbus. You know, they tried to pass an initiative that would require a greater majority and take power away from the citizens to file petitions and initiate actions against things that they don't like seeing happening to them as a result of things that legislators are doing. So the people have the power, but they don't understand the power that they have. So Derek, just if you would like to give us your thoughts on what you see in Project 2025, why it's dangerous, and what you think we can do.
Well, thanks, excuse me. Thank you for having me. I really believe it's dangerous because it's taking away people's right to be who they naturally are. Like you said earlier, they're destroying the Department of Education. That's people's number one foundation for being independent. You're taking away education. You want to get rid of the EPA. And they did this by letting the Supreme Court give the president king powers. So we're automatically eliminating the right of people to think for themselves and to choose for themselves. And they've been doing this for so long that a lot of us have gotten used to it. And it's a form of bullying. It's a form of making people feel, you know what, this is bigger than me. I can't defend myself. Let other people think for me. Let other people just do this to me. And it's not. And this is a time more than ever that all people need to come together and keep America a united states instead of a controlled one.
Yes, absolutely. I want to just read a few of the things that it proposes. Among other things, it promotes the idea of cutting overtime protections for 4.3 million workers. It looks to stop efforts to lower prescription drug prices. They actually want to raise the prices. They want to limit access to food assistance, which an average of more than 40 million people in 21.6 million households rely on monthly. They want to eliminate the Head Start early education program, which serves over 1 million children annually. They want to cut the American Rescue Plan Act programs that have created or saved 220,000 jobs. They like to restrict access to medication abortion. They want to push more of the 33 million people enrolled in Medicare towards the Medicare Advantage and other worse private options, expose 368,000 children in foster care to the risk of increased discrimination. They like to deny students in 25 states and Washington, D.C. access to student loans because their state provides in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants, and they would like to roll back civil rights protections across multiple fronts, including cutting diversity, equity, and inclusion related programs in LGBTQ rights in healthcare, education, and workplaces. So that's just a fraction of the things that they are proposing to do in this over 900-page document. We have been joined by Stephanie Phelps. Stephanie is a journalist. She's also the host of Another Look at Life with Stephanie Phelps on 95.9 FM WOVU. And we also have been joined by Frances Caldwell. Frances is the executive director of the African American Museum right here in Cleveland. And she has some interesting perspectives, and we like to get those as well. So, Stephanie, I'm going to shift over to you based on what you just heard about some of the plans. What are your thoughts about Project 2025 and what it proposes to do to America? I think your mic is muted. Yeah, still muted. Okay.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
All right.
First of all, Vince, I wanted to thank you for, even beginning to broach this topic. As has been mentioned, a lot of people don't know a whole lot about this Project 2025, including myself, but I do welcome the opportunity to lend my voice. And the fact that this 1,000-page document can be somewhat intimidating. And needless to say, I have not gone through the document. But overall, I think that the project sounds dangerous, and it does not sound like it is a document that represents democracy. And so I think my overall thoughts, I looked up some things regarding these 4 pillars of this project. And the first pillar is to put into place a consensus of how major federal agencies must be governed. So that sounds to me as if there is some kind of a mandate through this Heritage Foundation where they think that there is a specific way to govern the United States. Pillar number 2 is a personal database that allows candidates to build their own professional profiles and for coalition members to review and voice their recommendations. So that sounds to me like putting certain people into place to govern the United States. So it sounds like, as a matter of fact, I believe Imani mentioned this, which is, you pick your Supreme Court justices, and then there's an agenda so that if you get into problems or if you get into trouble, that you have somebody to give you an out. Also, there's a presidential academy, an online educational system taught by experts from their coalition. And for newcomers, it will explain how the government functions and how to function in a government. And so the last one, or the pillar 4, this is the actual playbook that they say that they are forming agency teams and drafting transition plans to move upon the presidential utterance of "So help me God." So as soon as the president, according to this, and this is actually from the Heritage Foundation's website, that this plan would go into place as soon as the president takes the oath of office. So,
yes. And I want to point out, in addition to that, that they want to roll back some of the protections for civil service employees so that they can be replaced with folks that they want to put in those offices. And the issue with that is that you could put folks into positions that aren't really qualified to do that work. And so when you talk about government efficiency, putting folks who are not qualified into those positions is going to result in a government that does not work as efficiently as it should. There is just all this talk about deregulation, and deregulation in many cases is something that's necessary. I was thinking about this as I was looking at some of these issues last night. Just the idea of doing away with the Environmental Protection Agency. Many may not know, but it was actually between Mayor Carl B. Stokes and Congressman Louis Stokes that the Environmental Protection Agency was created. And one of the things that makes it so meaningful is that environment is one of the greatest things that impacts the health of people who live in cities. So, the environment is extremely important. And, when they talk about environment, they always put it in the context of global warming and, fighting on carbon emissions and all that other kind of stuff. But there are other environmental issues like lead in the paint, lead in the water supply, chemicals in the water supply. And we haven't even begun to peel back the layers of the impact of microwave radiation and ways that we are affected by things that we cannot see. So to remove regulations that deal with protecting us through having standards for our environment is extremely troubling, because if you look at just the idea of depopulation, these environmental factors contribute to depopulation, and depopulation means less of us. But ironically, it also means less of them because they're not immune to the things that happen within our environment. Want to shift gears and move over to Frances Caldwell, who has some interesting views about Project 2025. And in our pre-program conversation, she mentioned that it's something that she doesn't feel has a chance to pass, or maybe she has some additional thoughts. So Frances, again, is the executive director of the African American Museum here in Cleveland. And I think it's also appropriate to mention that she is also one who is Republican. So if you'd like to give us your thoughts about Project 2025, the feasibility of it, and just the other thing that concerns me about it is that it seems to be anti-Black, and the platform of the 45th president seems to be an anti-Black platform. So I just want to get your thoughts about that. Your microphone is muted.
Okay, how do I do that?
You good now?
We hear you.
You hear
we
me?
hear you now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. When Vince called me day before yesterday and asked me, I heard of Project 225, but I heard things on the news, but I never really like read it or heard people talk about it. So he sent me a couple links and I listened to, the two people, and it's really like scary, like, oh my gosh. So I agree with everyone on that. But when I thought about it, in order for it to be enacted, it has to be a law. It has to go through the Congress, it has to go through the Senate. And then when I looked up the numbers for how many Republican senators, how many Republican congressmen, the Congress is predominantly Republican. The Democrats are very close. So it's like a 222 Republican congressmen, 216 Democratic. Now, when you go to the Senate, is more Democrats in the it's 49 Republicans for the Senate and 48 for the Democrats. Okay, I got it straight. So in order for that to pass, the majority of the Congress and the majority of the Democrats have to pass it. And I also found a few Republicans online who are against Project 225. So my answer to when Vince and I talked about it is that even though it's very scary, and I agree with that 1000%, and I'm not for it at all, but you need the Republicans and the Democrats to come together to make it a reality. And based on the numbers and how close they are and how many Republicans I've found who are totally against it, I don't see it happening. It to me is unrealistic.
Okay. I am not aware of the process, but when I reflected on what happened back in 1980, and this is where it became personal for me, because in 1980, I was awarded a grant to attend Bowling Green State University and achieve a master's degree that was related to public affairs television. I was working at a radio station in Akron at the time, and I was elated to receive this grant. And then President Reagan got elected, and they rescinded the grant, which dashed my opportunity. I am someone who has had several jobs, and almost every job that I've ever had in life happened as a result of affirmative action. And it wasn't a situation where I wasn't qualified for the job and I got it because they gave me this opportunity. I got those jobs because I was qualified and a door was open for me. Almost every job that I ever had, with the exception of working at WJMO, which was a Black radio station. So when I look at what happened during that time, it wasn't that one particular measure was passed at one time. There were a lot of different things that happened as a result of the creation of a document back then. And I could be completely wrong about this, but I don't think it's necessarily an idea that they're just going to en masse pass all these things at one time. I think that there might be measures that, on one day they may call for the elimination of the Department of Education. On another day, they might call for the elimination of the EPA. There may be incremental implementation of some of these measures. Some can be enacted, some may not be enacted. But what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding about this plan is that it's not so much necessarily focused on the president or the potential president, I'll say, but it's focused on the things that they want to accomplish. And it is unifying Republicans who have divisions, because not all Republicans are on the same page. You have some Republicans who have more extremist views than others. You have moderate Republicans. You might have some liberal Republicans. But in terms of what they would like to do in terms of taking over the government, that's what this plan is about. And this is what they are in agreement about. There are Republicans who do not like 45, despise him. They and didn't really want to have anything to do with him. But I think what they're seeing right now is an opportunity to do some of the things that they would like to do and get some of the things that they would like to see done, accomplished. And I think that's where the real danger is. Brother Antonio, you've been listening. I don't know if you've done much research about it, but I know that you are aware of it. What are your thoughts about Project 2025?
Well, that's very interesting. I think again with me, I look at the big picture. I look at the root cause. I look at where we are as a country and where we stand globally. So you got to put it all together. And I think we're on a path, on a course that has been plotted for a long time. And you can see these pieces. You even went back to Reagan talking about different things being implemented. We all talking about an issue of population control. This is what this is all culminating to. You know, they talked a little bit about the reset and the Great Reset global. We got to keep our eyes open and focus about the larger picture or where we going with this. I mean, because regardless of who's president, you know, America's going to play a certain role into the global scheme of things, regardless of who's president. You know, so let's look our eyes and let's look a little broader on what could be going on or what beginning stages that this is could be showing and implement for us. So I think that, you know, through what Mitch McConnell did and when Donald Trump was president before, putting people in certain places and far as in the judicial system, those things was being laid out. And that's one thing you got to give the Republicans credit for, because they stayed at it for a long time, putting these pieces together to bring us to the point to where we are at right now. So it's I think we're looking at a big population issue, and it's about control, about them being into that whole minority position, and in order for America to move forward, you know, they have to, you know, do things to stay in control. You know, and this is about control, and it's all about the numbers. You know, it's not a coincidence that we having these abortion conversations. It's about the numbers. It's all about the numbers and control. So we expand our mindset in thinking this is a global thing. So Black folks, you know, we can talk about the Republican Party and we can talk about the Democratic Party, but the point is, you know, since we've been over here, they've never been in favor of Black folks, regardless. You know, since we've been getting hammered since we've been here, and the point is, we're in this psychosis for so long that we don't see this, you know, and it's, you know, it's been a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy put into getting us into this Stockholm syndrome, into where we can't see our way through. Now, we can go on and take sides on the Democrats and Republicans, you know, but, you know, until we get to the point of understanding, being a community inside of a community, we just going to go along for the ride. And we've been going along for the ride for 400 years, you know, with adversity and with things going on, you know, to cause problems. But we got to wake ourselves up out this funk that we're in right now. And these folks is talking about resetting this situation, setting this up to where at least even people are entertaining Donald Trump at this point now, because democracy don't work for them anymore. They know in 20 years this is going to be a Black and brown country, okay, and they're not having that, okay. So they're entertaining a dictatorship for the simple reason because even in a minority position, they can still be in control. This is what this is all about. This is this change up, and it's been prophesied. So we have to find ourselves, and through our energies, you know, find out and stake out a situation for us as Black folks, because we keep trying to make a system work that was not put together for us in the beginning. You know, we try to make amends or make something happen and make something out of this capitalist system here that makes it works for us, and it's not going to work for us until we get ourselves together and understand who we are and go back to some of the things that that our ancestors laid out for me. That's how I look at this whole scheme of thing, because it's not all about just America right here, because it's a global movement and a global thing that is going on that's going to affect us all. So we got to expand our boundaries.
I just reflecting on what you were talking about in terms of dictatorship and democracy, and in many minds, this is being framed as a war between the two ideas. So on the Republican side, you have the idea of engineering a dictatorship, and those who are on the Democrat side are saying, well, we need to do what we can to protect democracy. Derek, in the private chat, you mentioned what happened with the Supreme Court and how they created immunity for the president. And so we have somebody who has been convicted of 34 felonies, and he's having serious conversation about being the president of the United States. But then you have brothers who have been convicted of having a couple of joints, and they can't get a job, can't apply for a job, can't get food stamps or anything like that. So talk to us about the engineering of dictatorship through this process, if you could.
You muted. You muted, Derek.
Derek, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
People forget during the insurrection, while people are arguing that, he also stacked the courts that benefit himself specifically. He stacked the Supreme Court with 3 justices. One was, rationalized an alcoholic. The other one was just a glorified paralegal who specifically benefits him. He put over 200 federal judges throughout the country, one of which is what's keeping him out of prison right now for sabotaging the government. It's made for him to be a dictator. The final blow was the Supreme Court giving him powers that no president has ever had. So when we say, well, it may not pass in the Congress or the Senate, it's irrelevant. He made it so where he can pass anything he wants, and he made it specifically for him. So this isn't about.
That's not true.
Well, it is true. He did it. He's doing it. I mean, it's not a belief system. He's doing it. He's got it right now.
But if you think about history,
the question people need to ask themselves, with all these policies of Project 2025, who benefits? Do the American people benefit, or does a certain demographic benefit? Because as what was just recently mentioned, the demographics are changing very rapidly. Already in a global society, white people are 10% of the global population, and they're diminishing in America. So we only have about 20 years before white people are a global minority and a national minority. You have to change that. Project 2025 changes those dynamics. So even though they might be a minority, those powers switch from one demographic to another.
Right.
Yeah. And when you look at presidential politics, we have an electoral college, right? You got, 330, 340 million people in this country. Not everybody votes, but it's the electoral college that chooses the president. So you still have a minority that makes the decision. And if you go back a few years, the Supreme Court chose the president. So, sometimes I just wonder about this idea that we live in a democratic society. It's democratic to a point, but not completely. And so I don't want to negate the power that we have as individuals with our votes. But when you look at the big scheme of things, it's always a few people who are making decisions for the masses of people.
Right.
This is something that I thought about earlier in the week after I saw a video on TikTok. And I don't know why it just resonated with me so greatly. It was the idea that one person in the name of Elon Musk has $200 billion. $200 billion in terms of his assets. And there are approximately 8 billion people on the planet.
Wow.
So this person with $200 billion could give up $8 billion, not miss a meal, not miss a flight, not miss a chance to live in his mansion or small house. And everybody on the planet would have $1 billion, and it's money that makes the world go round. So if everybody has $1 billion, everybody eats, everybody has a place to live, we're all good. But we live on a planet where 1% of the population controls 99% of everything, and they want the other 1%. Where is the equity in that? And then you want to have conversations about eliminating diversity, inclusion, and equity. Again, they're already doing that in Ohio. They're already pushing back the idea that colleges and universities can have DE and I in their programs. They don't want administrators to receive the training, to be mindful or aware of it and implement it in their practices. I mean, this is extremely dangerous when you look at what they're thinking about. I want to shift gears, and since we're talking about legislators, and I have to mention that Representative Sheila Jackson Lee transitioned. I want to give her respect. She was a warrior for Black people in our country, and we so appreciate her service. At this time, I'm going to bring into our conversation our Congresswoman here in Northeast Ohio. She is Shontel Brown, and I'm sure she has some thoughts about Project 2025 and what it represents. So welcome to 360 Info Network, Congresswoman.
Thank you for having me. And I think we got to call it what it is. It's not just Project 2025. It's Donald Trump and JD Vance's Project 2025. We need to make that clear as they continue to as at least Trump tries to distance himself. Project 2025, as you were talking about, would really be damaging to our community. You spoke a little bit about the diversity, equity, and inclusion component. I serve on oversight as a member of Congress, and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are doing everything that they can to reverse course on programs that have just benefited our community. Now, that is a harsh reality to me, because I am living, breathing, walking DEI. It is my life. It is not a program. It is not words. It is the life that I live, and it is the life that I fight for, to make sure that my community, who has historically been left out, left behind, and looked over, gets access to the resources that are going to be distributed in mass because of the historic legislation we were able to pass in the 117th Congress when Democrats held the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office. So now I'm seeing them starting to reverse course. And you touched on it a little bit too. You said that it's happening right now in Ohio. I would be remiss if I did not remind people about last year's two elections. One was in August, one was in November. The August election was their first attempt to usurp the people's power by removing the simple majority, by upping the threshold from a simple majority to a super majority, which would mean one person, one vote would no longer be equal. They wanted to raise that threshold from a simple 50% plus one to a 60% threshold. Now, when the voters found out what the extreme MAGA Republicans of Ohio were attempting to do, I was encouraged, because they showed up in record number at a time when Republicans had said before this they would not hold special elections in August. So they are willing to go against their own rules. They implement this cheat them if you can't beat them strategy. And so we saw this play out right here in our very own state last year in August of 2023 with issue 1. And that was because they wanted to raise the threshold, because they knew there was going to be a ballot initiative to enshrine women's rights to make their own healthcare decisions in November. And that was the second issue 1. And again, we did the same thing. We came out in record numbers when people found out that they were going to try to implement an abortion ban. And I know sometimes the word abortion is taboo in our community, but let me remind folks that we are the state that had a 10-year-old rape victim that had to flee our state to get the health care that she needed, because abortion care is health care. I need to remind people of our sister in Central Ohio, Brittany, who was undergoing a miscarriage in her bathroom and had something natural. The fetus was clogging her toilet, and they wanted to charge her with an abuse of a corpse. because this is the society that they want to have us live in under Project 2025. They want to criminalize healthcare decisions. Anybody who wants to make a decision as it relates to getting the healthcare that they need, they're prepared to criminalize that in Project 2025. But again, what I'm encouraged by, the good news is when the voters found out what they were attempting to do, and they used a lot of dishonest, deceptive, and deceitful tactics to try to misrepresent the truth of issue 1 here in Ohio both times. But the voters here are wise. So I think when people get the information, and fortunately, we're in July, so we got time to get them the information. And the last day to register to vote is October 7th. So we got time to get the voters informed. We got time to rally the troops. And I'm just, I'm ready to get out there and go to work, y'all.
Okay. So you mentioned the power of the voters, and I have to go back to the presidential elections that elected President Obama. Ohio is characterized as being a red state just because of, who lives in rural Ohio, and then you have who lives in urban Ohio. And it just so happens that we live in urban Ohio. And when we showed up at the polls, both elections, our president, Barack Obama, got elected. 45 has selected J.D. Vance as his running mate. I just wanted to get your thoughts about that as a strategy and what impact you think that might have on the election.
Well, what I do know is we know J.D. Vance here, and I think that the people of Ohio are experiencing buyer's remorse. Those of us who were aware and supported my good friend Tim Ryan are just recognizing or seeing how people are now responding to J.D. Vance. He is a person who has bent over backwards, tied himself into a pretzel to cater to an audience of one, and that is Donald J. Trump. And he has demonstrated that he is willing to do whatever it takes to please Donald J. Trump, not the people of Ohio, but this man who has vowed to be a dictator on day one. So I think that's what people should understand. This is a person who also is supportive of a national abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest. And I would just be remiss if I did not remind you of the two ladies who had to undergo and harsh circumstances. J.D. Vance would not have made exceptions in these cases. And so preparing to criminalize people for making their own healthcare decisions to benefit themselves is something that J.D. Vance does not support. He completely disagrees, in fact, and would be fully supportive of a national abortion ban. The other thing I think that's important to know is that when you have somebody who is willing to twist themselves into so many knots, almost to the degree of becoming a pretzel for the pursuit of power, then that is a person you cannot trust to make decisions for the benefit of their own constituents. This man has been in office less time than I have, and he is already on a fast track to be the second most powerful man in the country, only second to a person, again, who has proven that he will do anything that he can to stay out of jail. So he is not working for the public. Donald Trump is working for himself. So this is the stark contrast that we have. These are the people who are on the other side of the aisle seeking to be the leaders of the free world, which is a stark contrast to President Biden and Vice President Harris, who have done historical things as it relates to legislation that has transformed our community. I have to say this. I have to ask people to think back to 2016. This same type of energy, this waffling back and forth, this I'm not sure, or I'm not going to participate, or I'm going to vote third party because I don't like either candidate, is what got us Donald Trump in the first place. That's what got us Donald Trump in the first place. And because of that, he was able to appoint not one, not two, but three Supreme Court justices that we're talking about, these decisions that have had disproportionate impact on our lives. So because of him, and because people didn't show up in 2016, we got Donald Trump. He appointed these three Supreme Court justices who will be there for a lifetime. This is not something that is easily reversed, especially if we don't show up this election. And those 3 Supreme Court justices overturned Roe v. Wade. And I'll never forget it. It was my birthday, June 24th, 2022. So when we say elections have consequences, that's not just a cliche, because that is a direct result of elections having consequences. And then they overturned the affirmative action as it relates to education. Education should be the thing that levels the playing field in this country when it comes to opportunity. Well, they don't want us to be educated, and they've made that abundantly clear in their Supreme Court decision. And then they overturned the Chevron case. No one was really talking about that. That is taking the expertise away from the experts and putting it in the hands of judges. Now, I believe judges are smart. I believe they have a lot of knowledge, but they're not experts in everything. And overturning the Chevron case gives them that authority to determine things like how clean is clean water, how much, our Food and Drug Administration, what's good enough for us to eat. These things I do not want to trust to a judge. I want somebody who has expertise in that area to make those decisions. So that's the contrast. That's what we're dealing with. So you got Trump and Vance, you got Biden and Harris. It's a binary choice in this country. And I think we should be crystal clear about which of the two would be best for our future.
So, Congresswoman, I have to ask this question just based on what's going on right now, because just as we have Republicans divided, we have Democrats divided. And this is definitely a time when, as Democrats, you have to be united in order to win this election. There have been concerns expressed about the health of the president, specifically the mental health and the possibility that there might be some cognitive decline. Some of your associates in Congress have expressed their concerns, and they're saying that perhaps he needs to reconsider running, but it seems as though there's a lot more momentum in terms of keeping him on the ticket. What are your thoughts about this issue right now, and where you see things headed as we entertain a convention in the next month?
Well, if it wasn't clear, let me make it abundantly clear. I am 10 toes down, 100% riding with Biden, because this is the thing that I know. The man has made his decision. And until he says otherwise, that is the candidate. So as it relates to people who might have concerns, I understand your concerns. As it relates to people who have gone as far as to telling him to step aside, I personally don't agree with that. I don't think that it is the best image to put forth for the country and the world, for that matter. We are able to have these conversations, and there is a process in place that if something, God forbid, should happen to President Biden, there is a person that has been working with him side by side for the last 3.5 years. In fact, on the campaign trail with him in 2020, that is qualified and ready to go on day one. And it's called the vice president. And her name is Kamala Harris. And if that's too hard for you to say, then just call her Madam Vice President. That is what we need to be focused on. The one thing that I will say is we might have some disagreement on who should be at the top of the ticket. While I'm crystal clear, some of my colleagues might disagree. But where we are unified is the danger and threat that is Donald J. Trump and now J.D. Vance. We are very unified in that. So I'm willing to bet, without even having conversations with all of those folks who are saying he needs to step aside, that they won't be voting for Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, I am riding with Biden until he says otherwise.
It's good to hear your conviction and your passion about this. And I think the viewing public and the listening public needs to be as passionate as well, because one thing is crystal clear. We're going to have to be the ones who decide the future of this country. We can't leave it up to a few people who craft a manifesto to give themselves power over everyone else. So I want to thank you for joining us. I know you have a tight schedule, and I'm pleased that you were able to join us and add your voice to our voices, because we are on this broadcast because we have concerns about not only the future of this country, but the present of this country, because we live in the now. We can't live in the future because all we have is right now, but we can do things to affect the future of this country. And one of the most meaningful things that we can do is show up at the polls on November 5th and choose the next president of the United States. hopefully someone who fosters the ideas of democracy and not dictatorship. Thank you so much for joining us on 360 Info Network.
Thank you for having me. And if I can say one more thing, if I can remind folks, the last day to register is October the 7th, and early voting starts the next day. But you don't have to wait. If you like to vote by mail or vote absentee, you can request your application today. You do not have to wait to do that. And the other thing that I think is important that you touched on, Vince, is that when it comes to power in this country, when it comes to power, the vote is the thing that levels the playing field. Your vote. Whether you are rich or poor, gay or straight, black or white, male or female, GED to PhD, everybody gets one vote. And so I would just urge your viewers and your listeners and those who have been feeling disenfranchised, marginalized, or like it's not worth it because you're not into politics. I think you can tell from this program, politics is into you, and it's into you every day. So please, please, please make sure you exercise your right to vote in every single election, because it really does matter. And this election will be the most consequential election of our lifetime. The future and fate of our freedom is on the line. And I need us to show up like we have never showed up before.
So well said, Congresswoman. So well said. And I am hopeful that folks will heed your advice. If you need to get to the polls, find someone that will get you there. If you need to get to the BOE to register to vote, or, other places where you can register, do what you got to do. But we got to get this done. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank y'all for having me. God bless and have a great weekend.
You too.
All righty. Congresswoman Shontel Brown. We are pushing up at noon on 19 or 1490 WERE. And we usually conclude our broadcast, but because we are streaming live to StreamYard, we can actually continue the show, and we're going to do that. I've noticed quite a few comments in the private chat coming from Imani and coming from Brother Derek. I want to make sure that we are able to cover the things that you have expressed to us, because they are so pertinent to our conversation right now. So we're going to wind down the broadcast right here on AM 1490 WERE. Usually I will have Brother Hamtonio come in and give us some parting comments. We got about 14, 15 seconds, if you would.
No, just an interesting conversation, and a conversation that needs to be had, so we'll continue this when we are on the other side.
Okay. And I want to do a quick plug for Unmasked, Navigating a New World Order, that will take place at the Hermit Club on July 25th through the 27th. Please go online and get your tickets. I will put a link in the description to enable you to do that. I'd like to thank our engineer, Tone Harley, for making this happen for us today. And I'd like to thank you for listening. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone. Join us on the other side.
Peace.
All right, it's 12 o'clock noon right here on YouTube and Facebook. Brother Hamtonio has a YouTube channel. It's called The Journey with Hamtonio, and you can view our broadcasts on his channel. You can also view them on my YouTube channel. And I would like to encourage you all, we don't say it enough, but we need subscribers. Doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is punch the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. And when we do broadcasts like this, you get a notification about the broadcast, and you can always go back and watch it at a future time if you're tied up at the moment. So go to our YouTube channels, like, comment, subscribe, and at some point, it's going to be a tremendous benefit to both of us and to you as a listening and viewing audience. I want to bring Imani Capri back in, because this young lady right here, I look at as a bonus daughter, but I look at her also as someone who is extremely connected to young folk and the elder generation, because she's kind of in the middle of those two things. And she's just so knowledgeable and so aware. So I like to lean on her to get her perspective on certain things. And obviously she's done her homework and will continue to do the homework. And I heard, we didn't read 900 pages. We both kind of looked at some summaries and some, encapsulations of what this document calls for. But we're also aware of some of the nuances, and we're also aware of the intent. So you talked about J.D. Vance being selected as a running mate, and we haven't even gotten into what has happened in the past couple of weeks in terms of an attempted assassination that for some looks kind of questionable, like things don't really add up in that whole scenario. We're looking at what happened with the Republican National Convention and all these things that have happened in the past couple of weeks. But Imani, I want to give you the floor and just allow you to bring up some of the things that you mentioned in the chat.
I want to again thank you for the invitation to be here. I think Congresswoman Brown was spot on. It's not something that I talk about a lot, but I am also a Central Committee precinct person with the Democratic Party here in Cuyahoga County in Maple Heights Precinct 2B. And, what people need to understand, like the ground game, politics is a numbers game. Numbers in terms of people who vote and numbers in terms of money that is put behind candidates, campaigns, and issues, right? And so when we talk about Project 2025, we talk about the Heritage Foundation and a host of other conservative organizations. There are some people that I want to encourage the listeners or viewers to just go research. Google Leonard Leo, a conservative legal activist, former vice president of the Federalist Society, and then Barry Said. These two individuals represent the power behind organizations like the Federalist Society, other conservative think tanks, right? The office of the president is secondary. Think about if anybody has read or listened to audiobook, The 48 Laws of Power, there's a principle in there talk about cat's paw, right? It's basically like a political 3-card Monty. And you're trying to figure out where's Waldo? Well, Waldo is the money that is funding all of this, right? And there's a whole there's news articles that you can go read on this. There's broadcasts that have been done on MSNBC a year ago, and even with more recent updates. There is, I don't know if he's a congressman or a senator from Rhode Island that I was listening to today, who has been consistently doing presentations on who Leonard Leo is, his connections to the Supreme Court justices, how he handpicked them and recommended them to Donald Trump. His relationship, Leonard Leo's relationship with Clarence Thomas, and the funder, one of the donors behind Leonard Leo, Barry Said, who donated $1.6 billion through a host of like front organizations to this cause. So I want people to understand that, again, the true stopgap is us. What Congresswoman Shontel Brown shared about what happened here in Ohio last year in August, and the Republicans here trying to take away a simple majority when it comes to voting and getting initiatives on the ballot, and then the battle for women's reproductive rights. What stopped all that in the state of Ohio? The citizens of Ohio did. And in order for that to have happened, there had to have been people across party lines who voted for those things to not happen, right? Another key thing that I would remind us here in Ohio to really understand how powerful our voices and votes really are is do a little bit of research on Ohio's impact in general elections, presidential elections, right? There are many statisticians and political historians, people who research elections and all of that, who have said or put out that Ohio, I think to the rate of more than maybe 85%. What happens here in Ohio in terms of who voters in Ohio end up voting for as a presidential candidate, those individuals end up becoming president at a very high rate. So that saying that some people may have heard, however Ohio goes, so goes the country. It's like Ohio is a microcosm of the US. So we have to understand what we do here in Ohio doesn't only have impact on our state, but it has impact on the country and then extension the world. Why do you think there's so much gerrymandering going on here in Ohio? Right? Like, we got to understand our power. Why do you think JD Vance, of all the potential people that could have potentially been selected as Donald Trump's running mate, why JD Vance from Ohio? Ohio is a game changer. And for those dark money interests like a Leonard Leo and a Barry Said and the other people who hide behind a variety of front organizations, and they don't want the power of the people to prevail. They were not happy about what we did as voters here in Ohio. So please understand, for every resident that lives in the state of Ohio saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to participate, I don't know if I'm going to vote, it was us voting based on some things that we fundamentally agree upon that maintained a simple majority of one person, one vote here in the state of Ohio, and enshrined a woman's right to choose about her health care. And like Congresswoman Shontel Brown said, it was our state that had the 10-year-old who had to leave to get the health care she needed because of a child that was conceived from rape. So, let's be real. And for all those young people out there who sometimes question whether or not they should vote, I really want to charge the elders in our community and every person on this broadcast to try to connect and reach as many young people as you possibly can to encourage them to understand the power that they have and to use it. Right? And the divine irony, the other thing I would remind people as, my service as the #1 energy elevation coach and helping people transform their relationship with fear, stagnation, and stress into deeper levels of courage, healing, transformation, and personal power, is to understand that nothing that happens in the physical occurs without it happening in the spiritual realm first. How ironic that the assassination attempt on Donald Trump would come from a 20-year-old registered Republican young man with a weapon that same party has refused to pass reasonable gun legislation on. So I say that not to make fun of the situation, but to show people, as above, so below. What comes out your mouth, the power of life and death rests in the tongue, right? Our votes are an extension of our voices. Our votes are an extension of the power of the throat chakra. So when we activate and use our voices and empower our young people to do the same, when we meditate and we elevate our prayer life, no matter what religious philosophy you may follow, we can shift the reality on an energetic and spiritual level. And I think it's time for us to elevate our game book, our playbook, to that. That's the real playbook, right? That's the playbook that can checkmate what we're seeing going on with Project 2025. But we have to be present enough, like you said, Vince. We have to be present, not getting distracted by all the chaos that is Donald Trump and the news cycle and all of those things, to focusing on the things that we still have the ability to influence and control, which is actually a lot, but it's a ground game, and we have to share these knowledge points and encouragement with as many people as we can, and especially young people. And then we have to get out and really stand on business. I land my plane.
Okay. I want to bring Stephanie back into the conversation and just talk about the idea of third-party candidates. I know Marianne Williamson is someone who has expressed an interest in becoming president of the United States. Cornel West is also running for president right now, though many may not be aware of it because there's been pretty much a media embargo on it. I mean, Mr. West or Dr. West was here about a month ago, and he did a fundraiser at a masjid over on East 131st Street. And there was literally no media there aside from myself, Rhonda Crowder, and Felicia Haney. There was no one from 358, 19, 43, 55, 22. Nobody. CNN, nobody was there. It's like they don't care. What are your thoughts about third-party candidates and the impact that they could have on the election, i.e., taking votes away that could go to Democrat candidates?
Okay, so I first of all want to say that I'm trying to keep my journalistic hat on as much as possible, respecting the tenets of journalism and not weigh in with personal opinions. I'm not a pundit, so I'm not trying to necessarily judge anything or make any predictions about anything. But having said that, as you mentioned, Vince, you and I have talked about some of these issues, and that brings up Marianne Williamson. This kind of speaks to some of what Imani said as far as the spiritual and just, understanding that we are all one. And I think that Marianne brings a lot of that to the table in her as part of her platform. But when it comes to third-party candidates like a Marianne Williamson or a Cornel West or anyone else, I've been thinking about something that I heard that says that if the president, Biden, does decide to step down, it's a matter of when he steps down. And is that going to be before the convention, or will he make that announcement after the convention? My understanding is if he decides to step down, resign, whatever word we want to use, that before the convention, then that would leave an open convention and a free-for-all for, just about anybody to say that they would like to run for president of the United States, I believe, as long as they're a delegate at that convention, which is, I know, over 200 people. So, yeah, those are just my initial, thoughts and comments regarding that. I think that we'll just have to wait and see how everything plays out, and then determine from the actual candidates who are going to be the finalists, I guess you would say, who would be best for the country and protect our interests.
There are some rumblings that Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, may indeed be asked to step in. There have been colleagues in Congress who are calling for the president to resign or to step down and to make that possible. I wanted to ask Derek about it because he just mentioned in our private chat that there are a lot of people who do not want to see a Black female president. Just want to ask everyone who is on the line with us right now, what are your thoughts about the possibility of a Kamala Harris presidency?
I think it makes sense. And I also think that's why JD Vance was chosen as Donald Trump's running mate. I think that particular choice and what JD Vance is about, Congresswoman Brown shared some of that, is a dog whistle, specifically to counteract the possibility of Vice President Harris potentially becoming Madam President. But she's more qualified than Donald Trump and JD Vance together, in my opinion.
Francis, what are your thoughts about the possibility of a Harris presidency?
I think she would do good. I think she I mean, I've heard all the horror stories about her when she was in California, where people claim that she locked up all these black men. I don't know if that's verifiable, but that's what, people talk about when you mention her name. But I think from what I've seen of her, she seems competent. She seems intelligent. She seems articulate. So I think she could do the job.
Okay. Derek, you raised the point. You had to dip out for a few, but we brought you back. What are your thoughts about what you raised in terms of folks not being on the same page and having Kamala as president?
Might be muted.
He's
I know
frozen.
He ain't saying nothing. He may be froze.
Yeah, might be having internet issues. I'm thinking about what happened yesterday. There was some kind of glitch in Microsoft software that kind of shut down airports and other transactions that require
but let me say
internet.
something.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, man.
Yeah, I got to bring it back home. I got to bring it back home. We have to look at, and my concern is for black folks, period. That's all my concern is about black folks, because black folks have been subjugated, underserved, prosecuted ever since we've been here. Okay, so that's my concern about waking us up, getting us on track, and maybe getting us to an understanding of where we really at right here in this country. A lot of us just want to be accepted, just want to go along with the program, and want to use this system to our benefit. And this is the same system that got you in this place where you're at right now. And we want to use the same system to get us out. It don't work like that. You're going to have to do something else, okay, in order to make that happen. And saying that, I want to say this, where we at right now, and the cry and the alarm that I want to put out, this is an attack on black folks. That's all we're talking about. This is an attack on black folks. When you sit up here and talking about I made a few notes. Critical race theory, who is that affecting? Okay, when you sit up here and talk about abortion, we talk about these numbers, who is that affecting? That's black folks. When you talk about the educational piece, when you talk about affirmative action on what they did with the college situation, who is that affecting? This is black folks. And the alarm that I want to put on and reiterate is about this population situation. I call it, this is Custer's last stance. And this is one I want to make the people aware of. This is Custer's last stance. If they don't do something now to change the course of everything, they're going to lose it. Okay, so we're talking about desperation and desperate people and desperate situations is going on. This is the alarm. We can't get tunnel vision and get into this politics going. Let's look at this broader picture of what's being painted right now, and it's serious. So this is an attack, a straight out attack. Even when Trump, we could call it wherever we wanted, but we have noticed this. When Trump was president last time, those Karens and everything else came out the woodwork. People felt empowered. They've been feeling that for the longest, for a long time. But we can say it's coincidental or whatever. But when Trump became president, we see more and more of that. You know, when Barack Obama became president, we seen more militias just prop up all over the country. See, this is Custer's last stance. You know, and what happened with these people with Karens and things? What do you think was going to happen? You know, if Donald Trump get back in, how you think the empowerment of the police is going to happen? You think you're getting beat over the head right now? What you think is going to happen moving forward when he wanted to stick the dogs on you? I mean, meaning that law enforcement that didn't have patches on their uniforms. He wanted to do use the military to do certain things. And folks in the police uniform felt so empowered to knock folks over the head. Matter of fact, he gave him the thumbs up and said, "Hey, if you got to use a little extra force, go ahead and do it." You know, and we know sometimes those things is needed. But my point is, this is an attack, you know, of folks trying to turn the throttle and change the throttle around into empowerment because it's about those particular numbers. So I'm just saying this is for us not to lose sight on what's actually happened. This is an attack and a serious attack that is going on, and people want their country back again. You know, this is what it's all coming down to, you know. So we can't lose sight of it.
Yeah. You know, I heard this online last night, and it may or may not be true, but there was a brother that was doing a commentary about Project 2025. And he said one of the things that it calls for is not just the immunity that has been provided for 45, but they were also talking about immunity for police officers, meaning that you really can't hold them accountable for any of the injustices that they're responsible for, you know, and that lines up with this whole idea of taking their power back. You know, when we look at the formation of this country, people came from Europe, planted a flag, and just said, okay, now this is ours. When they said we the people, they weren't talking about everybody. They were talking about the aristocracy. When they talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it wasn't happiness, it was property. And those who had the ability to acquire property were the ones who had the resources to do so. So it's never really been about the people. It's been about the people who call themselves responsible for this country. But we've come back to this, and I so appreciate what Imani said about power to the people. The power rests in the hands of the people. There are more of us than there are of them, and it's time for our will to be done.
Vince, let me say this right here real quick. I just want to put this out to the people. Go watch a video on YouTube by Barbara Walters, not the older white Barbara Walters, okay, but her name is Barbara Walters. She wrote a book called How Civil Wars Start. Okay, she did a couple of interviews in reference to that. Check that out. And one of the things, I'm not promulgating a civil war or anything like that, but there's a couple of interesting things she said about that. She said, contrary to beliefs that people, you know, she was commissioned to go and investigate civil wars all over the planet, but she couldn't at that time do United States, but she had to do all these other countries. And she said, contrary to popular belief that civil wars start from the people being impoverished, and you know, always show like the poor people getting mad and getting doted on, and they just want to rebel against the people. I mean, the hierarchy. No, she said most civil wars start when you have a group of people that sees their power outgoing. This is our situation. They're seeing their power outgoing. They want the country back, and we got to change the laws to keep empowerment. This is what I'm saying. This is what we're zeroing in. I just want to put that out to the people that look at Barbara Walters, How Civil Wars Start. And you can, if you don't want to read her material, just go on YouTube and listen to her interview, and she lays it out.
I want to also amplify the idea that we cannot allow ourselves to live in a place of fear. And one of the reasons that this is even being brought up is to keep us in that place of fear. When you exist in a place of fear, you exist in a survival mentality, fight or flight. It really prevents you from reaching the higher levels of your cognitive ability. So I just want to bring everything back to where we started this program, and that was making people aware of their plans, but not allowing their plans to keep us frozen and not willing to do anything for ourselves. We can sit down and let them do everything that they want to do and acquire all the power that they want, or we can do what we did in that last election and say, no, we want to keep the majority where it is. We want to keep our ability to file petitions so that we can enact laws that are in our favor. So at this point, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Francis, I want to give you an opportunity to make any parting comments if you would like. You were kind of like the outside person on this conversation, but we respect everybody's political views. Personally, I'm not Republican or Democrat. I vote for the person who I think is best for the job. And I'm not beholden to party politics, but at the same time, I do understand the value of having leverage within a party and being able to influence the platforms of that party. Sometimes we have to work within a party to affect the things that we want to see. But any parting comments?
Well, I know when the gentleman talked about the Trump putting his people in the help me out, Supreme Court. But all presidents do that, Democratic and Republican. They all pick their people when they're in office and put them in powerful places. So I don't think that's just unique to Trump. I think all presidents have done that. Number two, when you talk about attack on, when Lynn talked about attack on Black people, I see some of your points, but when you talk about abortion is an attack on Black people, I totally disagree with that. As a Democrat, as a Republican, as an independent, it doesn't matter. The number one killer of Black people in the United States by far is abortion. Black women in America abort their babies more than any other group of women on the planet. And it's insane to me. So it's kind of like we're doing a self-genocide. So, I know a lot of people are for it and, they go protest and all that stuff. But I'm just saying on the human level, we are genociding a generation of our own people. So that's another point. And then when it comes to whether it's Trump or Biden, at the end of the day, like me and Vince talked about the other day, they're two wings on the same bird. Because as we just keep it 100, we always suffer no matter who's in office. It could be a Republican, it could be a Democrat, it doesn't matter. Our people are still suffering. They're still poor. They're still homeless. Now they got the borders open. They're bringing all these new people in here. They're getting millions and millions of dollars that should go to Americans, Black, white, brown. It don't matter what color they are. They're still Americans. We have our veterans sleeping on the streets. I mean, it's insanity to me. This whole thing is just insanity that we allow all these people coming and everybody's okay with it. Oh, well, we got to look out for the immigrants. Well, why don't we look out for the people, that help build this country? They pay taxes here. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
I just want to clear that one part about, I probably wasn't clear when I mentioned abortion. In the abortion indirectly, I'm saying that they're having this issue with abortion as far as theirs concerned to deal with their numbers. And that's an attack. You see what I'm saying? From that perspective, not.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I wasn't clear in reference to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to amplify that as well, Brother Antonio, because one of the reasons that they're pushing back on abortions is because their birth rates are low.
That's what I'm talking about.
So,
that's what I'm talking
so
about.
they have to do what they can to preserve their quote unquote species. So they want to deter their own from eliminating their own.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
Right.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's what.
Okay.
that's why it's coming back to that.
Okay.
Stephanie Phelps, you have any parting comments?
Well, I just want to say, some really thought-provoking conversation here. And I guess when somebody mentioned the bird, and, there's the left wing and the right wing, but they're all on the same bird. And yeah, and I guess there will always be people who have less than others. To Francis's point, Black people are definitely suffering, and at a higher proportion, if you want to use that word, a higher proportion than others. But there are also very many Black people who are doing well. And I think that we need to consider our vote to help us do as best we can. And then also to Imani's point, about the spiritual aspect of things and that bird, we're all one. So we need to do what is best for the majority. I think, Vince, you spoke to this also, as far as, just making sure that we not come together, but to make sure that we are all voting, in the best interest of everyone. I kind of lost my thought there, but yeah, I just think that this has been some really thought-provoking conversation. I'm sure anyone who has been listening, they're going to get something out of it, and it will make them, or cause them to maybe take a little more action or thought than they would have otherwise. So
Okay. Thank you for that. And I will take this opportunity to let folks know that Stephanie's show is on Fridays at 11 a.m. on 95.9 FM WOVU. And it is Another Look at Life with Stephanie Phelps. Imani Capri is on Tuesdays on 95.9 FM WOVU, Conversations in Courage. And she has great co-hosts, great conversation. I promise you, you listen to that show, you will grow as a person. Thank you for that. Francis Caldwell, Executive Director of the African American Museum. They have activities there on an ongoing basis. So stay tuned, stay plugged in. And I will put a link in the description of this program so that you can access their website and learn about the things that are going on. Brother Hamtoni, I'm going to give you the last word, brother.
Well, again, when we talked about being powerless, and the things that are affecting Black folks, I have to go back to my guy, Dr. Amos Wilson, and it is all we in this battle for our consciousness. This is all what it's about. What we're dealing with in our position. It's about our consciousness and where we at and where we resonate at. And he always say, change your consciousness, you change your reality. They do the things they do because the way we are. You change the way you are, they have no choice but to change. So since we as a people are stagnated into a certain frame of mind and a certain frame of consciousness, a certain frame of hopelessness, helplessness, of feeling that we in need and things of that nature. If you continue to stay in those realms of thought and consciousness, then the man is going to continue to run the same game and the same plays on you. So it's easy. It's an easy diagnosis and easy fix. So our problem is, again, it's changing our reality and our consciousness, our worldview and the way we look at it. And in closing, because we don't control a lot of the platforms that we're seeing right here through the imagery and through the information that's being output, because why would you want to deal with critical race theory? And why is that an issue? Because it's the images and the information and the narrative that is being put out there that has the ability to change your consciousness and the way you thinking, the way you feel about yourself. I'm a true believer. You feel better about yourself, you do better about yourself. So it's about this is a war about our consciousness and our mindset. So once we get to the point of understanding that, and knowing who we are and listening to that God consciousness that is inside of you as a person, as a people. This is what he has taken away from you. He got you looking outside of yourself all the time for something and for somebody else. You got to go to that creator and that God consciousness that's within and listen to the voice and take the time and clean your system out, because you can't be spiritual and be at the top of your game if you keep putting all this garbage inside your temple.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
So, we just got to do better and be more informed.
Okay. To your last point, detoxification is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
You put poisons in, you got to take the poisons out. That's one of the ways that you elevate your consciousness,
Yes.
Imani Capri. Thank you all for joining us. I am going to put some links in the description for this video so that you can read up on Project 2025. You can choose to read the 900-page document, or you can take a shortcut and read some summaries and watch some videos and have some extremely intelligent people give you some of the nuances of this. So just so that you know what it's all about. But the most important thing that we can do as citizens in this country is vote against it. So with that, thank you all for joining us. And as always,
thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
All right. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace. Peace.